Good morning, everybody. Okay, so there's been, before we get right into it, questions about what Bibles to use. For me, when I study the New Testament, this is the New Revised Standard Edition. This is actually the Jewish Annotated Study Bible, edited by Amy Jo Levine and Mark V. Bretler, but the crux of this is all of the adjudications are by the Jews. So it's for Jewish scholarship of the New Testament. If you took my class last year, Jews were really leading pioneers of call it modern academician of New Testament literature because of the similarity between first century Jewish writers and especially the gospel writers. And so from scholars like Geshe Vermees, David Flusser, Jack Clauser, blessed, these are people that have passed away. And your scholar in residence last year, Brad Young, he was a student of David Flusser, a Hungarian Israeli Jew. So if you ask a lot of American Jewish congregants that there was a huge discipline or a great discipline of Jews, they would be in shock, but there's quite a few. So that's why we have a published text. And for those who want to get, and we're going to get into a little bit today, what would I use academically for my Tanakh? This is Torah, the 5 books of Moses, the prophets, and the writings. This is the one I use. It's the Jewish Publication Society. It's been taking me to many places. He's good. So this is the one that I use. Anyways, I told Larry that we're going to really move away from the frontal learning really into exegetical analysis of looking at text. So I want you to bring we got the Holy Bible. Bible. Two Bibles. Why Bibles? That way you don't have to jump back in different sections, okay? Questions about that? Tough crowd. Okay. So, last time we talked about King Solomon the Wise made one massive mistake, is that he forced the northern tribes to build the Holy Temple corvée labor, basically slavery. They had to work without compensation, remuneration, whatever you want to call it. And when he died, the true animosity caused a split, and therefore had two kingdoms. You had the kingdom with the heart of it being Jerusalem, and Benjamin's just somewhere around here. They were kind of really in there too as well. And then you had the northern kingdom of Israel. And when you had the split, not only did you have two different monarchies running, one south and one north, but you had the rise of religious life in the north. They not only had to split politically, they had to do a different split. And there were sacrifices, not in Jerusalem, but done in the north. And so whenever there were new kings, the prophets were there to serve them as a type of moral guide, okay? And so in last week, this is what we talked about, that there's major prophets, and for last week, why are they major? Longer. I know, that's it. Of great significance, they're major only because they are more in volume. I mean, I guess we couldn't say the heavier. I mean, maybe it should have been the longer prophets versus the shorter prophets, but in Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel, the themes are a reminder of the covenant, Jeremiah's letter to the exiled people of saying that one day God will redeem you and bring you back, and God's presence is not just in a temple now, God's presence is everywhere, and that idea is perfected for the Jewish holiday of Sukkot. When we take the lulav, etrog, looks like a big palm branch, and we whip it around in every direction. And apocalyptic visions, and I don't want you to think like of end times. Remember, apocalypsis means covering what life is going around, and messianic hope. And we're going to be starting to talk a lot about messianic hope. And Daniel, and we're going to look at this momentarily, I created this chart. He's an odd duck, and we're going to get to him momentarily. Okay, and these are the less involved prophets. So if I ask my congregation to give me some love about Habakkuk, they're going to be looking at me saying, who is that person? So because they're just not as studied as much, and we really don't glean from liturgy, but these are the minor ones. And they have a different type of a message versus the major prophets. One, at the end of the day, we got to be good people. We got to be good mensches. That's the number one responsibility. Two, you got to take care of the marginalized in society. That the king has responsibility. Remember, there's no separation of church. The king, is in charge of executing religious law, working with collaboration with the priesthood, and if he neglects to ensure that people are taken care of, he's in violation of the law. So you got to take care of the marginalized, the poor, the widow, the orphan, to make sure that people are cared for. Now, I don't want you to glean any contemporary analysis because I think it's invalid due to a bevy of reasons, but for the most part, you're laughing. Why are you laughing? Why did I hit your funny bone? Go for it. It's okay.
Well, I mean, the present day,
Sure.
certainly is right.
Okay.
There's no separation of church and state, and it's growing like a here. They give us ritually
So yes, and I would say to you, al kama v'kama, which is a legal argument in the Talmud, all the more so, saying religious communities have an obligation to take care of their communities versus the state, okay? And that is heavily prescribed in rabbinic literature. So what I'm saying is Jewish communities are obligated to take care of their communities. We just don't want, state involvement is another conversation. So that's what, I get mad at rabbis when they try to, I call it couching scripture to convey that because it says something in the prophets, that means it needs to be a state or federal policy. Because it also says, I have to separate wool and linen. So we can't pick and choose what the state wants to do as to how we guide American life. But when you're in a religious community, or just a faith community, we'll call it faith community, and people know you and people know what's going on, it's up to the faith community to help sustain you and eventually teach you how to fish rather than give you a fish. Those are the Torah principles of making oneself self-sustained so they're able to do it to the next person. It's just a lot of, especially Reform rabbis, think it's speaking to a greater purpose. But remember, when they say follow the commandments during the prophet days, we're not picking and choosing what mitzvahs we're supposed to do when we're not supposed to do. It's very, very, very clear. And we're not today, thankfully, we don't enforce a lot of these biblical rules. So there's a book, it's called The Year of Living Biblically. I don't know if I mentioned it last year. I forget the name of the author. But for 1 year, he tried. What was that? It was he lived a year trying to enforce all of the biblical precepts. So he'd go around Central Park looking for sorcerers, adulterers, to stone them. So it's religion's a beautiful thing, and I don't like when religion's used to dictate policy. And there's no such thing as a separation of church and state. It just says Congress shall not endorse a religion. I think I'm right about that one. Right, Joel? Okay. Not different case. There's no, well, if you were in Germany or Europe, they, and they do have an endorsement. So if you lived in Germany, what religion you go to, it's called Minda, it funds the institutions. We're not allowed to do that here. We have dues. But you also have an endowment and a campaign, which I want Joel to find out about after. Okay. Okay. And above all, the greatest Judaism, and we paid the price for it this Wednesday, is the prophet's number one responsibility by far is idolatry. And I can't stress this enough. Idolatry is the greatest sin, especially in the rise of the Israelite religion and then in Judaism. So, no idolatry. And finally, even when we miss the mark, we will, God gives us a second, third, fourth, fifth chance. And so a lot of these prophets are not romance relationships. It's not like the Song of Psalms. It's God is the parent, and we are the kids, and we keep on making mistakes. And we do this by holidays, are called Avinu Malkeinu. So a lot of Jews don't realize when we say the word our Father, our King, it sounds a lot like contemporary, Christianity. No, Avinu Malkeinu, Barbara Streisand, when she sings the Janowski version, she's saying, Father, our King, and, please inscribe us in the book of life well lived. Wish us for a good new year. All these things. They're bakashot. They're petitionary prayers. Okay. So, I repeated this. Like Gomer, this is one of my favorite ones. It's about unfaithfulness to God. It's a metaphor. Infidelity. We got to teach religious school kids, but it's just saying you keep on cheating on God with all these idols, and God gets really, really mad. Hosea, okay? Amos, again, I'll call him Amos Famous Cookie. I like to say a strong on societal response of taking care of people. Israel is constantly corrupt, oppression, and also the issue with idolatry. Now, Elijah and Elisha, they are my favorite, when you read the book of Kings, they're nuts. You got it. Okay. They're really wonky, okay? Especially, Elisha, illness, and he sent bears to eat kids, okay? Elijah the prophet, and we sing Eliyahu Hanavi, we always welcome him back, that he's going to say the name of the Moshiach. I know you guys have a Moshiach, and we don't know who yet is the Moshiach. But every son born to a Jewish mother, every Jewish mother thinks their son is the Messiah. But that's okay. Now, I told Rachel with Teddy, I said, you're not going to like your daughter-in-law. Like, why would I say that? I said, because if the girls' hearts are broken, you'll be sad. But if anyone breaks Teddy's heart, you're going to, go to DEFCON high status. Okay. Elijah, when he was fleeing from Jezebel, and she wanted to kill him, and he ends up, the second book of Kings, he ends up in the mountain, in the cave, and he says, is there anything there? Who's there? And there was a thunder, and God was in the thunder, all that quote, and there was a still, Damakaka, a still small voice, okay? Our rabbis, Chazal, rabbinic literature, looked at Elijah the prophet and said, they didn't like the idea of saying, am I the only one left? And the way gleaned from it was, he was actually saying, am I the only good left? And that was a really bad suggestion, because since he said that, was given the task, it wasn't given, he was told, that Elijah moving forward will go to every single life cycle event, meaning anytime there's a Brit Milah, a circumcision, there's Elijah's chair. On the high holidays, a lot of congregations, we don't do it at Temple Emmanuel, there's an empty seat for Elijah to come and pray with us. Elijah is at the Passover Seder. We invite him. It's actually quite terrifying because a grandfather will say, You got to open the door for Elijah the prophet, and it's kind of unnerving as you think like this ghostly figure is going to come through the threshold. And he will announce his own wine glass, and he's going to announce the name of the Moshiach. That's Elijah. Okay? And Jonah, we read Jonah on the afternoon for Yom Kippur. Does anyone know why? Anyone ever read the book of Jonah? It's really silly when we think about it. It's a silly story, just like the book of Esther. They're silly stories. I mean, that's for another day. Why is Jonah ridiculous? Raise your hand if you haven't read it. It's okay. You've all read it. Raise your hand if you have not read it. Okay. Raise your hand if you read it and you can't remember. Okay. All right. So Jonah is how do I describe him as just an ungrateful. He's worse than being stubborn. He's just like, oh, look at that. Okay, I like that. Okay, he is. It's more. It's different than disobedient. He's like the self-centered, lazy. Yeah, self-righteous. Yeah, there you go. He's just someone I don't really want to be friends with. You know, he's kind of that kid in class who thinks he knows everything, and then when he's wrong, he'll never admit that he's wrong. Kind of like my father-in-law. Anyways, he's not watching these, believe me. Okay. So Jonah, Nineveh is they're doing bad stuff. And Jonah, this is the theme of Yom Kippur, and God says to Jonah, go and tell them to seek the Shuvah, get on the right path, redemption, say sorry. And they fasted, and they did it. And Jonah was mad. Jonah gets mad about it, okay? And he doesn't like the idea that these people get a second, third, fourth chance. And that's his story. And the reminder is we're all Jonah, and we don't have a second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh chance. What's the point of doing this religion? And then he doesn't like to. No, I'm talking about on Yom Kippur. It's like, why do we do all these life cycles if that's one deeper conversation about God? And then he's mad at Nineveh and he's mad at God. And you're allowed to be mad at God in Judaism. And God is just. It's a self-righteousness that because we say in the High Holiday liturgy that we are stiff-necked and self-righteous. That Pharaoh had a hardened heart, even though God hardened his heart. We really too sometimes have hardened hearts, and we are also stubborn, and then we're also self-righteous. So humility. That's why Jonah is really important that we read it in the afternoon Haftarah, the prophet section from Yom Kippur. Okay. So these are the prophets from Judah. Isaiah, we think he was writing during the time of in Jerusalem, and he was writing about the siege of the north when the Syrians were coming to destroy the northern kingdom. For some apparent reason, we don't know why, the Syrians showed up at Jerusalem and decided to turn back home. They probably would have taken over the city, but for some reason they go back. Okay? Micah, an often quoted scripture for social responsibility, he spoke to Judah, as well as issues regarding Samaria. And Jeremiah, he was also very strange, and I talked about him last week, is that he really was trying to tell the puppet king Zedekiah, do the covenant of God, do Torah, pay your darn taxes to the Babylonians, provide them with the vassal troops, and don't rock the boat and don't engage in war. And he was worse than Jonah. He was self-righteous, arrogant, thinking that he could team up with the Egyptians. And the Egyptians really didn't want to go to war with Israel the way they're depicted in the book of Exodus. And he just kind of screaming, woe is me. And they're exiled, and he writes the letter, okay? And then we get to Ezekiel. He too had I don't want to call the word mission, it's too religious for me. He was speaking to the exiled communities from Judah, and those exiled communities are the. Okay? And finally, I did this for you. Don't ask me how I did this. It took me a while. I tried to make it bigger. I'm sorry, the PowerPoints aren't consistent. Okay, so I, as a Jew, I first go to the Jewish Study Bible. That's my jam, okay? Or if you look at any other publications or this is what our, the order, I hope there's not any typos, okay. This is the order of our book. We have the 5 books of Moses. Okay, then we have the prophets, Joshua, Judges, Samuel, Kings. When we have the prophets, the later, we talked about them just now, and then we have the writings. Psalms, Proverbs, Job, the Song of Songs, Ruth, Lamentations, Ecclesiastes, Esther, Daniel, okay, Ezra, Nehemiah, and Chronicles. But during the split, when we had the rise of Christianity and then the Reformation, there were 2 different versions of publication and order. And in a way, I totally understand where Christian writers are coming from. Book of Ruth, in our writing section, we chant it during a holiday called Shavuot because it's during the harvest, and it's during the harvest, the theme of it. But what is the first sentence in the book of Ruth? Does anyone know? I will follow. That's the famous quote to Naomi, her mother-in-law. You know what Naomi's name backwards is? Is I moan. She constantly complains. She's constantly the biggest complainer. Okay. Anyone know? It says, in the days when judges ruled the land. So, where would you put the book of Ruth? Okay, or here. The reason our text, it's in the writings. Your text is in the prophets. I get it. That opening line. During the days when the judges ruled the land. Because look, when judges are consistent, because Joshua, we have the conquest of Canaan, okay, then you have the judges, and then you get to we're almost there. He's a judge. His sons are lousy. He wants to keep a job. And the Israelites say, we read our Bible. They looked up law, and they said, we're allowed to appoint a king. We want a king. And he says, are you sure? And we're like, yes, we're sure. Are you really sure? Yes, sure. He's going to tax. He's going to take, all their property. Are you sure you want a king? And he says, yes, we want a king. And if we look at it as historically accurate, you do want a king versus various judges. Why do you want a king versus various judges? Remember, think ancient Near East. Why do you want to get a king versus a bunch of judges? Consistency, Sylvester Stallone, remember when he was the judge, they go, that movie? Oh, I'm blanking. Okay, with Wesley Snipes. Okay, but why a king? What? Yes! That we have all these empires coming at our door, and we need one figure, one leader who will, do vassal treaties, who will muster an army, who will do trades, and I don't want to say the word deals, that too has American political connotation. Okay, who will do agreements. We need a leader. We need to have a king. We are like the only ones who don't have a king. So, and they get Saul. He had his bouts with depression, anxiety, tried to kill his son-in-law numerous times, did not fulfill God's will. But he had a prophet who was supposed to help guide him, okay? And then he died, and then Saul was so worried, he had to summon him back from the Witch of Endor, that fun episode. And then when Saul died, he got David, okay? And who was David's prophet? Very good. Nathan's famous hot dogs, okay? And Nathan had to rebuke him, okay? So you see this, that prophets were not just, predictors. They were really supposed to be a thorn in your side. So from my understanding, it's like the executive board of a congregation. Okay? I give a sermon. It's decipher. People don't. It's. I said, according to whom? According to the board. Okay. Thorn in my side. I want to do this. No. So that. I'm joking. Joel's been on my executive, forever. He's always going to be there. Okay. But that's their main purpose. Yeah. Remember in Lord of the Rings, they had the hand of the king. And you guys ever read the books or seen the shows? The Hand of the King was the chief advisor. But it's really more of a, okay, I want to invade this country. Do I have God's blessing? And he's going to say, well, yes, but you're ignoring, you have some communities who are worshiping to the Dagon, the fish god, or whatever it could be. And you got to fix that. You got to do this. And he's that person to remind you that he's ordained by God to a certain capacity, and they're really a good thorn. It's theological checks and balances, that kings cannot exist without prophets, and prophets cannot exist without kings. They have to work with each other. So the king, yes, is interested in expanding one's empire, progeny, dynasty, and the prophet wants to make sure that if there's going to be a monarchy, that it's done in the most ethical, moral, best way possible. We've had good kings, we've had bad kings, we've had lousy kings, we've had vanilla kings. But the prophets, the main entity is that they are there to be a moral guide. And the reason I had to pound this away at you for these first, 2.5 classes is that to understand how New Testament writers were using the prophets, we have to understand how Jews or Israelites themselves understood the prophets. On top of that, we also have to understand that I don't mean second person. Independent Presbyterian Church, when they read the New Testament and they're using the New Revised Standard Edition, they're using the order of the Christian Bible. So some may be prophets, some may not be. Like, for example, the book of Daniel. Daniel's written way later. That's why it's in the book of writings. The scene takes place in Babylonia. But he's writing during Antiochus IV, the Greeks. But for Christians, he's writing in Babylonia, so he should be sandwiched with, where do I have him? With Jeremiah and... is that where he's at? Yeah, that was a good guess by me, okay? And Chronicles is kind of like the last, final historical book. So now you see that there's a difference. And the first 2 classes, we talked about translation. So now I finally get to ask, and I emailed Larry last night or this morning. I said, we're about to conclude with how Jews see the prophets. Now it's time for us to begin truly the purpose for our class is how New Testament writers understood the biblical prophets to do what? Why do you think they needed the prophets? Foretell what? Say it louder like you mean it, okay? Yeah. There you go. It's okay. It's okay. So my job is to be a mensch contrarian, okay? A contrarian. I'm not denying that they're wrong. Who am I? I'm just a kid from Michigan, born and raised in South Detroit. You guys don't follow Journey. Okay. Don't stop believing? Okay, hard crowd today. I'm just going to give you the perspective of Chazal, which is a fancier name for rabbinic literature, and modern, postmodern. I guess postmodern is the end of World War II. How they understand the prophets, and then we're going to see what Christians think of the prophets. I mean, at the end of the day, I like to joke. You guys won. You guys won. You know why? How many Christians are there? Like 2 billion? There's over 1 billion Hindus, 2 billion Muslims. There's only like 20 million of us. You guys definitely get the W. So I'm here just to show you the differences, okay, and point them out. And then when we get in the Bible, it's okay to have a good machloket. That's a Hebrew word, a good debate. Good debates endure for the sake of heaven. I'm not here to ruin anyone's faith. That is not my job in any capacity whatsoever. And if you say that I got too close to that line, please let me know so I can soften it. But I don't want to do that. I want to be respectful that I'm in your home and in your faith community, and I want us all to be on the same page. Okay? Cool? Okay. So, who are the prophets for you guys? Okay. So, we need to reframe the word prophecy. As we said, Jews understand the prophets as thorns in our side. But for Christians, they are the tellers into the future. Okay? Isaiah. I broke this down into like 7 substantial themes. That's my goal. So why do you think Christian writers... No, let's go back. Why Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and we can assume especially Matthew is a Jew. Why did you would think that he would know that biblical prophets were moral seekers, thorns, but he changes the narrative. Is it advantageous? Or is he a true believer? And does he need it in order to drive home a point? I'm going to say he's definitely a, hey man, I had one of your drinks right now at the Pig. Feeling good. Okay. Okay, I'm just kidding. Inside joke. At the Symphony. Okay. Okay. You were hungover last Sunday? When you get my age, I'm older than you think. I have one drink and I can't even, headache and everything. Okay. Was he a true believer? Yes, 100%. Did he understand original understandings of biblical prophets? 100%. Do I think he used it as a way to cite references to have this new Moshiach, this anointed one to the Davidic line who will restore God's majesty on earth? And if you took my class last year, you know that that is really a Jewish theme because we do believe in a person who will reestablish one's majesty on earth, and that is Jesus of Nazareth, or it was John the Baptist, the Egyptian prophet. All these different Bar Kokhba. I have a prayer in my car. It's called Tefillah HaDerech. It's a prayer, and it says Moshiach HaTefillah. It says the Messiah's prayer, and you're like, what are you talking about, Adam? Are you a Jew for Jesus? No, it comes from 770 Parkway, Brooklyn. Do you know who lived at 770 Parkway in Brooklyn? Menachem Schneerson, the Rabbi, the most influential rabbi in the modern period. And a lot of people believe that Menachem Schneerson is the Moshiach and that he will one day come back again. Okay? And they rebuilt his house near outside Tel Aviv that has this, everything is the same. But he truly, I want to say about the themes of this. And the reason why, I'm a very big fan of the Rebbe, that John Lewis and Newt Gingrich got together to give him, when he died, the Congressional Medal of Honor. And John Lewis said one of the biggest regrets in his life is that MLK never met, Menachem Schneerson. I mean, he was a big believer that there's no such thing as a bad Jew, that he believed in, I guess, proselytizing internally, that making sure Jews were going back to mitzvahs. And so no one else was as transformative as the Rebbe. People go to his grave, they get wedding photos. It's okay. Oh, he's politicians would go to get blessed. He used to pass out dollars, and you read his book by Joseph Toulouse. It's called The Rebbe. And if you go to Israel or parts of Brooklyn, you'll see his face everywhere. He was truly a wonderful human being. There's no other rabbi in world history in the modern period that has done anything to advance Judaism. That's why he was so beloved. Okay, but we have these themes. That's the whole point. So I think Matthew represents all of those. I think if you're trying to start a new religion, or maybe Matthew was just trying to wasn't starting a new religion, but maybe he was trying to get the main person in the religion, the main guy. Following me? That I don't think Matthew wanted to separate himself from Jewish ethos. Paul, on the other hand, did. Okay, so 100% New Testament writers or believing Christians, they look at biblical prophets and quote as a fulfillment in Jesus. That the person that said prophets are talking about, they're not talking about Hezekiah or future kings or people or sons. They are talking about Jesus. Okay? So in Deuteronomy 18:18, I hate reading the PowerPoint. Just bear with me. Hopefully there's no typos. I'll raise up a prophet for them among their own people, like myself, and I'll put my words in his mouth, and he will speak to them that I had commanded him. What do you think? If you were to read that right now, who do you think he's talking about? Just be honest. Jesus. You sure? Who's unsure? Okay. 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 I didn't realize it would be like, darn right it's Jesus. Okay, I guess it's IPC. Okay, it's Presbyterianism. Okay. If that was at Mountain Brook Baptist, would be a different story. Can I make that? Okay. Okay. My beloved Paul, blessed memory, he was their music director, so I can make that joke. Okay. All right, let's go to Amos Famous Cookies. I love you. Spurn your festivals. I am not appeased by your solemn assemblies. Okay. If you offer me burnt offerings or your meal offerings, I will not accept them. I will pay no heed to your gifts or failings. Spare me the sound of your hymns. Don't tell that to Cantor Whitner. And let me hear the music of your, and not let me hear the music of your flutes or lutes. I can't read it. But let justice well up like water, righteous like an unfailing stream. Okay. What do you guys see from this one? Do you guys think this is like a rejection of? So why do you think? Okay, man, you're okay. You should be at Emmanuel soon. Okay, okay. What up? Go. Keep on going. Okay, and therefore, if God doesn't want, the burnt offerings, guys, Leviticus is horrible, okay? The sheep offerings, the wheat offerings, the grain offerings, the eagle offerings, okay. That's a joke. What does Jesus represent? That's it. That's it. Right? Okay? That Jesus is the final sacrifice. Okay, theologically, okay. Why was Jesus sacrificed? What do you guys hopefully learn in church? Okay, thank you. Go. It's okay. Be religious, okay? I have to learn more about the contemporary Presbyterian church, okay? Okay, you guys are too much doubt. Okay. Sacrifice, he was the final sacrifice, and the power of the cross, okay? And then, and eventually, what does Paul say, especially about like circumcision? I know where he quotes Abraham, and why is it not necessary? What do we need? Circumcision of the heart. We don't need to do these rituals anymore, all these sacrifices. This is not a way to do religion. I got to tell you, I was talking to one of my dear beloved Chabad rabbis, and I looked at him and I said, do you actually want a third temple? And and because the only way for the third temple to happen is if our Mashiach comes back and we build it. It probably would be World War 15 because we have to destroy the Dome of the Rock, which I don't recommend at this given time. Okay. That would be a big no. No thank you. Okay. Totally unnecessary. Okay. And I go, really? I'm like my Larry David. And I said, do you want to go back to like sacrificing like cows? I go, do you really think that would be like a great image? Like a bunch of priests who claimed to be from the priestly line, and they go and they take the cow and they sacrifice and splatter his blood and wheat offerings and dove offerings. I go, do you really think that's going to really, I don't want to say attract people to Judaism, but I kind of, if you asked me to sacrifice a cow, I couldn't do it. Yes. Okay, so now, go ahead, sorry. Could it be a representation of corruption? I can tell you this. Was there money lending happening in the temple? Yes, you had to buy stuff to sacrifice stuff. So there had to be some type of fee for service, okay? Don't you guys have a fee for service? Do you guys pass around, you guys still do that in church? What? For high holidays? Oh, what do you mean? What are the tickets? No. We have no tickets. Just a big name tag for security purposes. Wink, wink, but it's really so I know your name. I'm like, oh, nice to see you again, Mickey Schwartz. Oh, hi, your eyes are up here. Okay. No, a lot of congregations do charge for high holidays. There's a great scene in Curb Your Enthusiasm when they're like scalping tickets outside of shul in LA. Okay. And then you have the high holiday appeal. We don't have one at Temple Emmanuel either, but we do talk about our large endowment, which is another conversation for itself. No, you need money to do religion stuff, and I think Jesus was mad. Okay, but Jesus also gets mad at Sadducees. He gets mad at Pharisees. He gets mad at a lot of people. I call that internal Jewish squabbling. Okay. Right now, I'm mad to my core at anti-Zionist rabbis of their self-righteousness and amoral behavior, okay? And it's a big deal right now, and I had a whole fire and brimstone sermon, but usually my mom is the editor extraordinaire, and she says, no. Okay, no, it's ordaining anti-Zionist rabbis. We've been doing this for thousands of years of internal unnecessary battles, okay? It's very easy to call for a ceasefire while you live in the Upper East Side versus living in the Gaza envelope. Okay, that's for another time. Okay, so No, I want to say that Jesus, like, you got to stop the sacrificial system, because during Jesus' time, even when he dies, what is still there? Until when? 70 CE, okay? It's still there. And so, and when Matthew is unable to get his church going, and then Paul with the Acts of the Apostles, they try to go to different synagogue communities, and then they take the mission to the Gentiles and are successful. But we have another problem. I want everyone to turn, and I got 5 more minutes, right? 5 more minutes, Larry? You're the ball. You're the boss. Okay. Deuteronomy 12. Okay? I got an issue. Deuteronomy, I think it's 12. Jews, by the way, are really bad at quoting scripture. I just want you to know that. Okay. Hold on. I got to make sure it's 12. All right, 13, I lied. 13. Okay, 13. Deuteronomy 13. Oh, 13:2. Okay, 13:2. If there appears among you a prophet or a dream diviner and gives you a sign saying, let us follow and worship another God whom you have not experienced, even if the sign important that or the spell, his name comes true, do not heed the words of that prophet or that diviner, for though Adonai is your God testing you, whether that you really love Adonai your God with all your heart and soul. Follow none but Adonai your God. Okay, observe his commandments. So, what do we do with that verse, guys? I don't think Jesus was serving other gods. Jesus was, for me, Jesus would have kept first century kosher. He would have worn tzitzit. He probably would have worn like the Jew hat. And if you want to know why I'm not wearing my professor hat, I feel more comfortable wearing a kippah in a church. It's okay for me. No, he only engaged other Jews. He studied. He knew his text left and right. Okay. He made minyan. He davened. He prayed. But what do we do with all these miracle people who perform miracles? I can tell you, when we looked at last year, we looked at tons of rabbinic literature about all these weird dudes performing miracles, like the poisonous snake bit Honi, and Honi didn't die. That snake died. Like, woe to be that snake. Or Honi, the circle maker, who made it. I know rain has a different meaning today, but actually made it rain. Okay, so what's going on? So if I'm a Jew now and saying, hey, believing Christians, can I say that God protected me, that some signs or wonders, if someone walks on water or resurrects the dead, even though we have that in our tradition too as well, or, with the fish, with the bread, all the blind, all the miracles. But it's God is testing me to make sure that we stay true to Judaism. So how do we reconcile this verse? I know how Matthew's going to reconcile it, and that's going to be for next week's class because I have a few more minutes. What do we do with this one? And light with Amos' famous cookies, and then Deuteronomy 18, I'll raise up another prophet who he could be talking about Joshua, or he could be talking about other figures and judges. Okay, faith, I agree. Deuteronomy 18, commentary, talking about Ezekiel, okay, for Jews. So we have all this stuff. But I love your answer. This is where we're going to have to use faith. Because Matthew, I'm going to debate Matthew. And then when we get into Isaiah 53 next week, do we have class next week? Man, you're really putting me through the ringer. Class before Rosh Hashanah, class in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Okay. Well, I think I drank one of his beverages before I agreed to do this again, Larry. Okay. That's going to be the crux of the problem. But I think faith is the way that Matthew's going to deliver this. Because you have to convince, I don't like the word convince. You have to show them that there's a better way in a life, and here's how we can make sense of it even if there appears to be contradictory appearances. Okay, go have a good worship.